is my channel. Yusuf out there. These two, may God save Serbia and Syria. I'm going to talk on atheism, or anti-theism, I guess it's called. But I really think it would just be called, those two terms become very useless with people like Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris. The fundamentalist atheists, or the anti-theists, the people who are proselytizing Christians but one God less, people who are just, I mean, somebody pointed out to me the God Delusion, which I have a copy of also, nice shiny cover on it, as the arguments that he makes are just silly. Like an 8th grader could make those arguments. Or somebody looking at the text of Genesis and saying, oh, these are just myths and stories, and you either have to take this super literally, no, there's no choice. You have to take this super literally. It's true or it's not true. Either all of it's true or none of it's true. Either all of history is true or all of history isn't true. Think of looking at it that way. Come to find out, many myths and legends actually have a basis in fact. And that's another thing. Truth and fact are not the same thing. So take a class on archaeology. I'll give this to you for my example. You take a class on archaeology like I did. The guy said, if you're looking for truth, go down the hall to the philosophy department. This is facts. This deals with facts. I think he said it was a quote from a movie or something, but he said it was very appropriate because it doesn't expose. It's, this is the facts of it. It's not truth. Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens I wouldn't categorize in these things because Sam Harris actually, at an atheist gathering, he said, we've got to get rid of this word atheism. He says, we can't be meeting like this. This is silly. And he goes into it and he says, there's these experiences that people are having that are very real. And he goes into this meditation, talks about, meditating and, this experience, and then, which is mysticism. He doesn't use that word, but that's what it is. And then I heard him on a talk show talking about psychedelic drugs, and then with meditation, you're not just the observer, you actually become, one with the universe, which you can get through psychedelic drugs or meditation. And he says, and then there's other phenomenon that are really real, that a person actually has to experience for themselves. Which I've been saying all along. I won't debate atheists because it's like trying to if a man's blind from birth, how am I going to describe to him the difference between black, white, neon green, and dark purple? I think the biggest problem with the atheists have is not necessarily just the non-believer, but the reason rally people and all these weird types of things. People who would write stuff on a poster board and hold it up like good people don't need a heaven and all this stuff, and it's actually very silly because you become such a fundamentalist. Now, I will argue about history or who believes what, Like if somebody comes up to me and say Christianity was invented in the year 500 by Moses and Joshua after they killed the Canaanites, and they're the ones that started the British Empire, and the British Empire took over, the entire world. That's why, Brazil speaks English, and, but they never got so far north as America. That's why America is, North America, the United States, is French. It's all French speaking. I'd argue with that. But there are people who are so fanatic and so uneducated that they don't realize that with a book like the Bible, started out with the New Testament. New Testament was written by the church, within the church, for the church. What we see that's in the books that are in the New Testament. So you'd figure the interpretation of that is left up to those people. It's not some outside group, seeing that there's one-sided letters in there. And you already had 367 years before it was a case where you had those mentioned. And it's mentioned in a letter by one guy who says he should be read. It's pretty much the consensus at the time. The consensus of the four Gospels within this community goes back further, but you already had a set of beliefs. Okay, these ones are the ones that we're going to read in our thing that's already established. I'm saying they were written in 367, but that's when it was said, alright, this is what we're going to use. I would find Dawkins to be the one, and I think I'm just going to coin the term Dawkinsite, or Dawkinite, or whatever. His name's Richard Dawkins, so Dickites, the Dickites, who are these petty little, they're pissed off. I mean, he mocks the devotion in the documentary Root of All Evil, which I saw like probably 4 years ago. It was around the time of my sister's marriage. Was mocking the crowd at Lourdes, the pilgrimage to Lourdes, which Christopher Hitchens may have done, Sam Harris wouldn't do. I've actually seen him defend people going to pilgrimage sites. Says, no, let's not, I have nothing against these people's devotion, or, the emotions that go with this, or the insight, but, I mean, it really does get silly when you get to Dawkins. Hitchens actually, after making the movie, I think Angel of Death, or Hell's Angel, about Mother Teresa, actually felt bad for her, oh, she backed the Duvalier family, or she did this, or, well, hold on, how much did she know about them? Getting a donation from them. Sure, the Mafia gives money to the Roman Catholic Church. You're going to blame the Roman Catholic Church for the Mafia? I mean, that's, oh, they support the Mafia. Well, it's not, no. He looked at her as a victim, because her letters showed that she was in a state of what many Christians call the dark night of the soul. She says, I don't feel the presence of God. And she had severe lack of faith for the last 20 years of her life. in the Western sense. In the Eastern sense, since we just see it as faithfulness or loyalty, she didn't. She was doing her job. And the Sisters of Charity are not. They're not there to set up hospitals. I mean, I knew somebody that worked with the Sisters of Charity that actually did a lot of good. But the snippy, blunt, well, either you have to be a creationist or you're a moderate. No. Christian religion starts with Christ. It doesn't start with any of the Old Testament stuff. Even among Christianity, that was debated about. You had the Marcionites, which were Marcion was irritated. He looked at the Old Testament and said, "Good God, this is disgusting." So this pessimistic, anything that anything. It's almost like saying anything metaphysical is stupid or dumb. I mean, what if they find out reincarnation is true? What if they find out that's real? I mean, if they were actually, I mean, it'd be hard to do, but I think there's evidence mounting for near-death experiences of not being chemicals firing in the brain, for reincarnation, for things like this. I mean, do they then ignore science to pursue their own means? I would say yes. I would say that the atheists are probably the most biased when it comes to science, and I would put them in the same crowd. These types of atheists, not just someone who says, "Oh, I just don't believe in a God," almost just agnostic. This militant type of atheism, where they have to gather in groups, where they go to meetings and basically forms a religion. So they are fundamentalists. They're the fundamentalists of the agnostics. They're a form of Protestantism, actually, since they are the most severe form of Protestants. They are protesting the church. Had it not been for Luther and Calvin, there wouldn't be a movement like this. I really believe that too. Yeah, there were people who didn't believe in God. We can see far back as 500 BC, people saying that the gods aren't real, but they were talking about the gods. Now, try to show me the Tao is not real, or there's any evidence against the Tao. You notice when I write God, I write G-D, right? Because my God is not the Western God, or not my God, the God. God. It's not the Western God, it's not the sky God, it's not the God of the fundamentalist. We wrote, edited, and compiled this book. This actually happens to be Gideon. Somebody must have taken this, lifted this from a hotel. I don't know how I got it, but I'm not the one that lifted this from a hotel. I don't like King James translations. It's not. I used to like it, but not so much anymore. I'm more fan of the NASB or the Catholic Bibles. But this is the Word of God. No, it's not. In Christianity, he's never said that. This is infallible. No. This is the Word of God. This is really, even when the devil is tempting Christ in, I think it's in Matthew or Luke, that's just silly. No, you're going to go by those words. And it's not the Quran. Only very modern Western Christians, only last about 150 years, maybe 200, I'll even be generous and say 500 years did they believe this. Did anybody espouse this belief? Creationism is very modern. I don't want to hear, oh, that's what Christians always believed, and now they're just backtracking because of modern science and blah, blah, blah. No. No, 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 no. No. What happened? Did somebody after, I mean, look at cosmology. The atheists were saying for the longest time the universe was eternal. It was the Christians, and by Christian I don't mean Protestant, I mean Christian, believed the universe began. Both time and space began. So there was no void for the Big Bang to expand out. This one atheist teacher that I had, a geologist, trying to explain the Big Bang, and he was acting as if it was just particles going out, you know, all the stuff that would make up rocks and everything, you know, and planets and whatever, was just going out into this empty void. No. Both three-dimensional space as we know it, and they theorize there's like 11 collapse dimensions, and time itself. So what is outside? There's no void outside of the universe. I mean, it's impossible to comprehend true nothingness or true oblivion. Just as it is God, but people have been having these mystical experiences for a long time. Now, if this thing starts to get passed down from father to son, like a religion would, people say, "Oh, education is the key." Well, that's not been shown to be the truth at all. Atheism is a reaction against. In the orthodoxy, atheism is a reaction against the Western God. It's the closest thing I can say Eastern Orthodox God to be would be the Tao. T-A-O, like Taoism. So show me that there's no evidence for the Tao. People say, well, the claims in the Bible, well, I don't know. The Bible's off limits. It's biased for us. Nobody outside church read the Bible. In fact, today, still to this day, the remnant of the ancient liturgy, you hear the doors, you know, closing out all those who weren't baptized members. If people want to attack Christianity for being real or not, I'd say, well, Christianity is the word for the concept. I would say, if you're saying Christianity, say the church, and you see a real body acting as its own government, not of land, but of believers. The initiation or the entrance would be baptism. The participation would be the Eucharist and other works. You can go from that from a historical standpoint, but as arguing with atheists is like arguing with a blind man who's been blind from birth about the difference between white, black, green, neon green, and dark purple. It's just useless. Eastern Orthodox do not proselytize. There's a good reason for that. When Kirk Cameron comes up to you and asks you if you're going to heaven or hell, or tells you you're going to hell, that is very modern. That's a very modern American form of Christianity, which I would say is not Christianity. It's not, at least not historical Christianity. That's very silly. And these people, they're Protestants. They're not Christians. I don't see why people can't just be a Christian. they have to be Protestants. And it's become synonymous. People say, oh, well, there's Christians and there's Catholics and it's like, what Christian? The Catholic Church was Christianity for the first 1,000 years. There was other things that they were called heresies, and they would be called heresies by these modern day evangelical fundamentalist Protestants. But yeah. Oh well, the church, and I've heard this by atheists. Well, the Catholic Church doesn't believe in evolution or the Big Bang. Yes, it absolutely does. Popes have come out and said that many, many times. So that's pretty silly. I don't know. So you have to look at the degree of the atheist, because it really is nothing. It's a non-thing. These people that like to gather, if they want to talk about being irrational, are just as irrational. There are more things to this world than science, and even in science, there's a priori. Is beauty scientific? Try to scientifically try to give me, conclusive proof that you love your wife. Yeah, these are things that. No. It's only physical and empirical. People say I'm rational. I'm a rationalist. No, you're not. You're an empiricist. And I think empiricism gets run to the ground by David Hume himself. The great empiricist David Hume runs empiricism into the ground. Well, I'm a rationalist. No, you're an empiricist. The religious people would be the rationalists. Take a philosophy class, for God's sake. Well, for your sake, not God's. Or you ask people, hey, have you ever read this or that? Well, I don't need to read any of their books. Billsy Bob actually says that he doesn't need to read any of the atheist works. He just knows there's no God. It would be nice to argue with somebody who. I wonder what would happen to Billsy Bob if he actually sat down and read Augustine's Confessions. Now, I'm not a fan of Augustine, as you know. I'm Eastern Orthodox. But, yeah, if somebody were to actually sit down and one of these anti-theist people, who I find many times are undereducated, and I'm talking about the fundamentalist fanatics, sit down and read Confessions. And I guess there's a way you could read it where you would just be, kind of dead-eyed or fish-eyed, and just, be reading the words. And how you read a book and you don't really. I've read the last 5 pages. I don't know what I read. I was thinking about something else. It would be like that. It's just like, oh well, that's all fine and silly. Or, there's no reflection. There's no. I'm right and that's it. Nah, people thought the coelacanth. No, that can't possibly be alive. Or the gorilla was thought to be a myth. Until I think like 150 years ago, maybe 200 now. It was just a myth. No, there's no such ape that's bigger than a man, and all this stuff was considered to be myths until they actually started finding it. So I don't know, these movements, and then the fact that it can't get passed down because atheists are shown to have a negative birth rate. It's just a reaction to something. That's all atheism is a reaction against atheism. It's not, you believe, I believe what I believe, whatever. And I'm speaking of this fundamentalist atheist thing. Unless you actually prime your children for it, which Madalyn Murray O'Hair, who was a criminal and wound up getting murdered for what she did, who started the American Atheists, her own son became a Christian, and she said one of her famous quotes, I would have rather had him been a black or a homosexual than a Christian. Shows her views on that. And I don't know. It just strikes me as odd with these people trying to claim to be rationalists, or actually be, as being skeptics. They wind up becoming so dogmatic. I mean, just try to doubt try to doubt at an atheist meeting of what they profess. And they say, well, this could be. I mean, it's almost that there's a consensus of dogma there. It's very strange. Very, 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 very odd. Again, arguing with an atheist is like arguing with a blind man about color. It gets you nowhere. I know my friend David P. Witham likes to argue with atheists, but I won't do it. I don't do it. And usually the atheists that come on my channel are very petty. Or I talk to them for a while, and they're not these fundamental radical atheists, and I think that those people are foolish. So I don't know. Just rambling. Been a long, hard day. Sucks when the days blend together. Take it easy. Peace to you. May God save Serbia and Syria. I think I had a point at the beginning of this video, but it got lost along the way. Silly, like an 8th grader could make those arguments. Or somebody looking at the text of Genesis and saying, oh, these are just myths and stories, and you either have to take this super literally, no, there's no choice. You have to take this super literally. It's true or it's not true. Either all of it's true or none of it's true. Either all of history is true or all of history isn't true. Think of looking at it that way. Come to find out, many myths and legends actually have a basis in fact. And that's another thing. Truth and fact are not the same thing. So take a class on archaeology. I'll give this to you for my example. Take a class on archaeology like I did. The guy said, if you're looking for truth, go down the hall to the philosophy department. This is facts. This deals with facts. I think he said it was a quote from a movie or something, but he said it was very appropriate because it doesn't expose. It's, this is the facts of it. It's not truth. Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens I wouldn't categorize in these things because Sam Harris actually at an atheist gathering, he said, we've got to get rid of this word atheism. And Sam Harris, the fundamentalist atheists, or the anti-theists, the people who were proselytizing Christians but one God less, people who were just, somebody pointed out to me the God Delusion, which I have a copy of also, nice shiny cover on it, as the arguments that he makes are just, here's my channel, Yusuf Altair, these two, may God save Serbia and Syria. I'm going to talk on atheism, or anti-theism, I guess it's called. But I really think it would just be called, those two terms become very useless with people like Christopher Hitchens.